Forget the horned helmets. Forget the mythical shield maidens you've seen on TV. The most dangerous Viking women weren't just characters in a story, they were real. And we've got the proof, buried in the earth for 1,000 years. For generations, we've pictured Viking warriors as one thing: brawny, bearded men with axes in hand. But what if that whole picture is wrong? Across Scandinavia, archaeologists have been unearthing graves that completely shatter that image. These aren't just women buried with a knife or a few trinkets. We're talking about tombs packed with swords, spears, shields, and sacrificed war horses, the full honors of a high-ranking warrior. Today, we're not talking about myths. We're counting down the actual warrior women whose graves are forcing us to rethink everything we thought we knew about power, status, and danger in the Viking world. Kicking off our list is a name you might recognize, but few know the real story behind it: Lagertha. While she's a star in pop culture, Lagertha's story comes from a 12th century text, the Gesta Danorum, written by the chronicler Saxo Grammaticus. She lives in that fascinating gray area between legend and possible history. According to Saxo, Lagertha's story starts with a brutal injustice. When the Swedish king, Fro, conquered Norway, he murdered the Norwegian king and threw the women of the royal family into a brothel to humiliate them. Hearing this, the young hero Ragnar Lodbrok sailed to Norway for revenge. But he didn't fight alone. A group of the abused women, led by Lagertha, dressed in men's clothes, grabbed weapons, and joined the battle. And Lagertha wasn't just in the fight, she was the key to winning it. Saxo describes her as a skilled Amazon who, though a maiden, had the courage of a man and fought in front among the bravest with her hair loose over her shoulders. Her skill in battle was so incredible that Ragnar himself fell in love with her, giving her credit for their victory. But her danger wasn't only on the battlefield. The saga tells us that after a complicated romance with Ragnar, she married a Norwegian king. She later quarreled with her new husband and, wanting absolute power for herself, killed him with a spear she had hidden in her gown. Her goal? To rule Norway alone. Now, historians are right to point out that Saxo's tales were often exaggerated and inspired by classical stories of Amazon warriors. There's no hard archaeological evidence for Lagertha, but her story is so powerful because it proves the idea of a female commander wasn't strange to the Viking mindset. She might have been inspired by Norse goddesses or half-forgotten tales of real women. Lagertha represents the cultural blueprint for a dangerous woman who could lead armies, seize a throne, and blur the lines between warrior and queen. Coming in at number 4 is a woman whose danger isn't measured by battles, but by the sheer terror she inspired even after she died. In a 1,000-year-old grave in Gerdrup, Denmark, archaeologists stumbled upon a seriously unsettling scene. It was a double burial, with the remains of a man and a woman, later revealed by DNA to be mother and son. But this was no ordinary burial. The woman was interred with a knife and, crucially, a spear right by her side, a clear symbol of warrior status. A woman being buried with a weapon like this was one of the first clues challenging old ideas about Viking gender roles. But it's the rest of the scene that shows her truly dangerous side. Someone had deliberately placed huge, heavy boulders on her chest and leg. This wasn't an act of honor. Archaeologists are convinced this was a chilling ritual meant to pin her down, to physically stop her from rising from the grave. In the Viking world, you only did that for people you believed had supernatural powers, the restless dead who might come back to haunt the living. The fear wasn't just that she was a warrior, it was that her power went beyond the mortal world. And what happened to her son, buried beside her, just adds to the mystery. His body was found in a twisted position with a broken neck, which suggests he might have been executed. Was he a sacrifice? Or was this a family tragedy about a powerful matriarch so feared that her community took extreme measures to make sure she stayed in her grave? We may never know the whole story, But the Gerdrup woman's burial is stark proof that some women were seen as so dangerous, their power was feared even beyond death. Not all danger comes from a sharp piece of steel. At number 3, we have a woman whose power was arguably way more subtle and influential, the Fyrkat Seeress. Her grave, found inside the massive Fyrkat Ring fortress in Denmark, was one of the richest female burials ever discovered from the Viking Age. She was laid to rest in the body of a horse-drawn carriage, a sign of incredible status. She wore a stunning blue and red dress decorated with gold thread, clothes fit for royalty. Her grave was filled with items from faraway lands, like rare silver toe rings and bronze bowls from Central Asia, showing off her wealth and connections. But mixed in with the usual symbols of a high-status woman, like scissors and spindles, were much stranger objects. Archaeologists found a long iron staff with bronze fittings, believed to be a magical wand or a seer's staff. And get this, in a small purse at her waist, they discovered a stash of henbane seeds. Henbane is a highly poisonous plant. If you throw its seeds into a fire, they create a hallucinogenic smoke that can cause trance-like states and visions. This wasn't a warrior in the traditional sense. She was a vulva, a seeress who commanded immense spiritual authority. Living inside a military fortress, her advice would have been sought by kings and chieftains. Her visions could have started wars, sealed treaties, or condemned men to die. Her danger wasn't in her physical strength, but in her knowledge of the unseen world, of herbs and poisons, and her ability to influence the most powerful men in her society. The Fyrkat Seeress didn't need a sword to be one of the most dangerous women of her time. She commanded power through fear, respect, and the mind-altering secrets she carried in her pouch. We're about to get to our top 2, and these next finds are backed by irrefutable proof that female warriors weren't just real, but held the highest ranks. If you think the real history of the Vikings is as mind-blowing as we do, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the past. Now, on to our number 2. Our number 2 pick proves that the most famous female warrior wasn't an anomaly. In Solør, Norway, a grave found way back in 1900 held the remains of a woman who was, without a doubt, a warrior. Unlike other cases that were debated for decades, archaeologists knew she was female from the very beginning, based on an analysis of her bones. And her grave goods left no room for interpretation. She was buried with a full warrior's kit, a sword, an axe head, a spear, arrowheads, and the metal boss from a wooden shield. For over a century, she stood as one of the clearest examples of a woman buried as a warrior. But the story gets even better. Recently, researchers took another look at her skull and noticed something that had been overlooked: a deep dent in her forehead. After running 3D scans and forensic analysis, they concluded the injury was consistent with a brutal blow from a sword. While it's impossible to be 100% certain, if this exact injury were found on a male skeleton in a grave full of weapons, the immediate conclusion would be that it was a battle wound. She is the first potential example of a female Viking who didn't just own weapons, but suffered a violent, battle-related injury. This wasn't just for show. The warrior of Solør was a fighter who likely saw combat, and she has the scars to prove it. Her grave is crucial because it adds another body of evidence, showing that warrior women existed across the Viking world. And here it is. At the top of our list is the woman who completely changed our understanding of the Viking Age. A warrior buried over 1,000 years ago in a spectacular grave in Birka, Sweden, known as BJ 581. When her tomb was first excavated in the 1870s, archaeologists were blown away. It was called the ideal grave of a high-ranking Viking warrior. Inside lay a skeleton surrounded by a shocking arsenal: a sword, an axe, a spear, a battle knife, 2 shields, and a quiver of 25 armor-piercing arrows. She was buried with 2 horses, a mare and a stallion. a sign of her status as a mounted warrior. Most importantly, resting in her lap was a full set of gaming pieces. In the Viking Age, these weren't just for fun, they were strategy tools, the mark of a military commander who led troops in battle. For over a century, everyone just assumed the skeleton was male. I mean, with that armory, who would think otherwise? But over the years, some researchers noted the skeleton's frame seemed slender for a man. The debate simmered until 2017, when a team of researchers published the results of a DNA study. They extracted DNA from a tooth and an arm bone, and the results were undeniable. The skeleton had two X chromosomes. The ultimate Viking warrior was a woman. This discovery sent shockwaves through the world of Viking studies. This wasn't a myth. This was a real-life military leader, a commander confirmed by science. The gaming pieces suggest she was an officer, a strategist who planned tactics and led soldiers into combat. Isotope analysis of her bones even revealed she had traveled widely, suggesting she was a professional warrior, not some local who just happened to be buried with weapons. She stands as the first definitive genetic proof of a female Viking warrior of the highest possible rank. A woman so dangerous and respected, she was given one of the most magnificent warrior burials ever found. So, from the feared sorcery of the Gerdrup woman to the strategic mind of the Birka Commander, the evidence is piling up. The Viking Age was home to some of history's most formidable women. These are not legends. These are real women of flesh and bone, whose power and danger were so great that they were honored with the same weapons and status as any male chieftain. The discovery of these graves forces us to throw out the old, simple story and embrace a more complex and, frankly, far more interesting reality. A world where women could be rulers, sorceresses, and high-ranking military commanders. The ground is still giving up its secrets, and with every new find, the Viking world gets richer and more vivid. What other truths about our past are just waiting to be discovered?